shocking truth of Moses. What happened at the Red Sea will haunt you forever. The deafening roar of the ocean. An eerie calm ahead. Waves surged high, crashing, foaming. Everything seemed alive and hostile. At the heart of this chaos stood Moses, staff in hand, his face a tapestry of determination and fear. Around him gathered thousands, their faces twisted with worry, murmurs ricocheting through the air like bullets. Will he do it? Can he part the sea? The water shimmered, dark and foreboding, as if hiding its own dark secrets. Every eye was glued to the miraculous sight unfolding. Just beyond, a path began to form, jagged edges of water lifting up like a great wall. It was as if the ocean held its breath, waiting for the command to unleash either salvation or doom. The tension crackled like lightning, and a shiver ran down the spines of the onlookers. They felt it in their bones. Something incomprehensible was about to happen. And then, in that moment, when time seemed to freeze, shadows flickered. Was it a trick of the light? No, there was again a fleeting glimpse of figures swirling in the depths. Were they spirits? Or perhaps the lost souls of those who had perished in the depths of the old world? People gasped, clutching each other as fear twisted in their chests. An unsettling whisper danced through the crowd. What else lies beneath that watery abyss? The ground trembled as Moses raised his staff higher, calling forth forces beyond comprehension. The wind howled, almost like a warning. The sea roared, lashing out with force, yet it obeyed. Two towering walls of water stood erect on either side, a breathtaking sight of nature's power, yet somehow grotesque, as if time stood still on the edge of a precipice. But could it hold? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. With a final roar, the wind silenced, and the sea stood still. Everyone held their breath. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then a crest of water surged forward, crashing, and a resounding boom echoed as if the very earth was breaking apart. Panic erupted in the crowd. Run! Someone screamed, and legs bolted, hearts racing. Would the water swallow them whole? Moses gazed down the narrow path, the walls glistening ominously. He felt a tightness in his throat, but he pushed it aside. Their families depended on him. Striding forward, he led the charge, every step a battle against the force pressing against them. And there in the distance shadows flickered again, darting in and out of view. Were they watching? Waiting? Moses glanced back, thoughts racing. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking just beyond the light. What waited beyond the wavering walls of water? What would they find at the end of the path? As feet rushed forward, the echo of whispers seemed to grow. Help us! Voices intertwined with the howl of the wind. Who were they? Would those voices drown beneath the weight of the waves? The answers whipped around him, tantalizingly close, yet forever out of reach. And as the journey to the other side began, the question loomed, would anyone emerge unscathed from the haunting truth lurking in those depths? The crowd surged forward, propelled by a desperate need to escape the wrath of nature. Moses pushed through the throng, the path ahead narrowing, the walls of water looming taller with every step. Each heartbeat sounded like a drum, pounding the rhythm of fear in his ears. That flickering shadow lingered at the edges of his vision, weaving in and out like a predatory animal waiting for the right moment to strike. Keep moving! Moses shouted, his voice hoarse with urgency. He felt a swell of dread deep in his gut, intensified by the faint whispers echoing from the depths. The ground beneath him vibrated, resonating with the pounding hearts of the travelers, echoing their collective terror. Moses' mind raced. Surely they couldn't be the only ones daring the ocean's fury. But if the whispers were true, if spirits were caught in this watery prison, then with each step, they risked awakening something untold and explosive. All around, the people's faces twisted with anxiety, eyes wide and darting. There was chaos on the surface, but below? An abyss that promised an even more harrowing fate. Suddenly, a child's voice pierced through the murmurs. What were those shadows? Panic erupted once more, sentiment hardening into a singular focus. Survival. As they pressed on, a rumble tore through the air. The walls of water quaked ominously, and for a frozen moment, it felt as if the ocean would reclaim them. Moses instinctively raised his staff, feeling the surge of divine energy, but doubt clawed at him. Could he truly command this torrent? Would this time be different? Then a deafening crash. One wall of water collapsed for a fraction of a heartbeat, sending sprays of salt water like icy daggers across the crowd. Shrieks echoed through the pathway, filled with terror, as the people stumbled backward, trying to avoid the impending catastrophe. "Stay together," Moses called, desperation coloring his voice. But chaos reigned. Bodies collided, arms flailed, and people cried out as they fought against each other, their minds spinning with the primal urge to flee. The path ahead shimmered eerily. Moses squinted, struggling against the rising mist. There was that a figure swimming through the depths? Submerged and reaching out, its eyes glimmering with longing, greedy and desperate. In that moment, the whispers grew clearer, clearer than before. "Help us! Bring us back!" The voices twisted around him like tendrils, pulling at his heartstrings, tearing at his resolve. Who were these souls? Why were they trapped here? Could saving themselves mean condemning others? Moses' heart pounded. He felt the weight of every life pressing down on him. He could plunge forward, risking everything, or he could turn back. Was it his duty to confront this dark secret? Or was preserving his people's safety worth the sacrifice he might have to make? With sweat pouring down his brow, he took a step back, torn between two worlds. His mind whirled with impossibilities. What awaited them at the end of this perilous path? Was the truth he faced his salvation, or the very thing that would haunt them all forever? And as the shadows writhed below the surface, one chilling thought echoed through his mind. Sometimes, the darkest truths are the ones we never want to unveil. The crowd pushed on, minds racing and breaths shallow. 1 second felt like a lifetime, as the crashing waves called out with feral wails, each voice mingling into a haunting chorus. Moses clenched his staff tighter, feeling the power surge around him. But power alone couldn't contain the fear gripping his heart. Suddenly, a shrill scream cut through the chaos, a woman's voice slicing straight through the din. "My baby! Where is my baby?" Panic erupted as people turned wildly, eyes searching for the child lost in the frenzy. Moses felt a jolt of cold dread. The shadows danced beneath the surface like wraiths, lurking and waiting. It was as if the sea itself was hungry for souls. "Focus!" Moses bellowed, desperation clawing at his throat. "Push forward. We need to keep moving." He rallied against the tide of chaos. But the voices beneath the waves surged louder, drowning out reason. "Join us, help us!" His heart raced as he turned to the murky depths, squinting through the mist. Those desperate figures were growing clearer, thrashing and clawing in the watery grave. They were not just shadows. They were souls, once living beings caught in a cycle of despair. Each face twisted in agony sent chills down his spine. A wild glance to the side showed the crowd fraying, some slipping back, drawn by the cries of the lost. A hand grabbed his shoulder. It was a young man, his face pale as the moon. "What should we do? We can't leave them." His eyes glistened with panic, reverberating Moses' own fears. But could they save them? What if the cost was too great? Uncertainty knotted in Moses' gut. He wanted to be the shepherd, to guide them all to safety, yet he knew that the closer they got to the brink, the more the spirits would stir. As he wrestled with his conscience, another roar echoed from the sea. The water swelled, and Moses' instincts surged. "Stay together. Don't look back," he ordered. The pressure built, drowning out the thunderous pleas that had begun to sound like mocking laughter. Bodies surged forward, a wave of frantic energy fueled by survival. Above the turmoil, a flash of silver caught his eye. A scale shimmering in the chaos, juxtaposed against the dark hues of deep water. Was it a fish? Or something much more sinister? Moses inhaled sharply. The thought of confronting whatever lay beneath those depths made his heart race. What if it was a guardian? Or a trap? "Keep your eyes ahead," he called, but even his own heart beat to the rhythm of dread, painting shadows on his resolve. Pushing through the mass of humanity, he finally caught sight of a narrow point in the path, where the water gleamed with an otherworldly light. The way stretched out, beckoning them toward an uncertain fate. Was it the end of the road, or the entrance to something even darker waiting just beyond? As they approached, a low rumble emanated from the depths. "Help us, help us!" The chorus crescendoed into a haunting plea that reverberated through the very core of his being. A memory flared within him, a vision of a past he wished to forget. With a firm grip, Moses steeled himself. Every second counted. They could keep running, or face their fears, face the truth that lingered just beneath the surface. Suddenly, the mist coalesced, and out sprang a figure, its eyes blazing with intensity. Moses staggered back, heart thundering, the air thick with tension. "What is happening?" someone shrieked, and a sense of inevitable doom washed over the crowd. Moses' voice broke through the panic. "We must confront it, whatever it is." But would anyone follow him into the depths of darkness, or would the shadows claim them all? Moses' heart raced as the figure materialized from the mist. It was not just an apparition, but an embodiment of terror, its ghastly form twisted, as if the very sinews of the creature had defied nature. A wide maw grinned, revealing rows of jagged teeth, glistening like blades. The moment felt suspended, time itself bending under the weight of dread. "Please!" a voice broke through, a member of the group. "What do we do?" Fear had turned her voice into a tremor, the crowd anxiously hovering between hope and despair. "Face it!" Moses shouted, drawing a breath. The words left his mouth, but doubt lingered behind them. Facing this creature felt like standing on the edge of a cliff with no knowledge of what lay below. "We cannot lose ourselves to fear." Then, the creature lunged, and instinct took over. Moses raised his staff, channeling energy through it. A pulse of light burst forth, illuminating the darkness surrounding them. The light flickered against the stormy shadows, staving them off, but was it enough? The crowd gasped, eyes wide, as the creature jerked back, momentarily stunned. It screeched, a sound like metal scraping against rock, echoing through the air like a knell. The haunting chorus of lost souls intensified, merging with the creature's cries, creating a cacophony that wrapped around them, binding them in a web of raw terror. Moses' grip on the staff tightened. The creature seemed to gather itself, its malevolent eyes fixated on him, sparks glinting as if it held dark desires. "Join us," it hissed, a chilling whisper laced with promises. "We will free you from this pain." "No!" Moses shouted, the thought curling in his chest with a cold, steely resolve. "I'm not your pawn." But behind him, the crowd wavered, hearts beating with a shared uncertainty. Some hesitated, swayed by the notion of solace in a harrowing reality. Voices murmured, fragments of fear penetrating the air. "What if it's right? What if we're meant to be here?" The shadows danced closer, more insistent, tugging at hearts and spirits. Moses felt their pull. It was intoxicating, this promise of liberation. Yet, he knew there would be no peace in surrender. Stick together, he cried out. Fight the darkness. Remember what we came for. But the grip of despair tightened as another figure broke from the huddled mass, a woman, her face pale and drawn, eyes glistening with desperate hope. I need to go back. My baby is calling. Her voice pierced through, momentarily shattering Moses's resolve. In that tense moment, Moses was forced to confront the gulf between revenge and redemption. Could he continue to fight, knowing that the loss could shatter their very souls? Or would he lead them deeper into the abyss, following a voice that promised release? The creature surged back, a violent flash of silver scales and thrashing limbs. Flee! It bellowed, the ground trembling beneath him. Your freedom lies within. For a heartbeat, a choice hung in the air. Would they trust Moses and push through the darkness, or would they succumb, each feeling their own burden too heavy to bear? Moses' chest tightened. Time was slipping away. This was no longer about him. It was about the girl's frozen scream echoing through his mind, her desperate cries for help mingling in the air. He glanced behind him one last time, holding the collective fear of the group in his gaze. We must break free from their influence. We must. Before he could finish, the world around him began to shatter, reality folding like paper, as the water surged in a violent, swirling vortex. Dark waves curled around them, and the wretched figures surged once more, going for the souls of the living. They knew that hesitation could be deadly. And in that chaos, a sinister laugh from the depths twisted in the air, threatening to engulf them all. What happens next? Will Moses surrender to this dark tide, or will he fight back to save them from eternal despair? The swirling vortex roared, drowning out the cries of the crowd as they clung to one another, fear etched across their faces. Moses could barely keep his footing. The world was becoming a chaotic whirlwind, a menacing dance of shadows intertwining with desperation. Hold on, he yelled, voice straining to break through the din. He thrust his staff forward, trying to anchor reality around him. Bright tendrils of energy snaked outward from it, momentarily illuminating the faces of his companions. Eyes reflected panic, but there was also realization. They could either submit to despair or rise together against this embodiment of death. As the waves crashed higher, the creature howled, its contorted form emerging from the depths. It lunged again, jaws gaping wide enough to swallow them whole. In that horrifying instant, Moses saw every face in his group, so many lives tethered to a single choice. Stay together, he shouted, but doubt seeped into his heart. The creature's chilling promises hung like a cloud above them, thickening the air. We will save you from this pain, it crooned, that horrid echo filling the space with malevolence. Suddenly someone screamed. A young man, someone Moses had seen as a beacon of strength, was pulled away by the murky depths, his cries stifled as dark waters dragged him under. Panic erupted. The crowd staggered, instinctively trying to flee from the horror. No! Moses surged forward, breaking the fog of fear with sheer determination. We must fight. He felt every second weighing heavy like lead in his chest, each heartbeat counting down the lives they might lose. The creature roared again, mocking their distraction. In its massive form, there was a flicker of the familiar. It bore the essence of all their fears, guilt, and despair. Moses realized what it represented. It was them. It was everything that had haunted them. Each regret and sorrow given monstrous life. With renewed vigor, Moses cried out, "Face your fears. Stand firm." He felt energy buzzing in his fingertips as he forced out a stream of light that illuminated the murky water surrounding them. Each pulse lit up their trembling faces, each flicker of hope rebuilding their resolve. And then something unexpected happened. The shadows recoiled, twisting away from the light. The dark tendrils that wrapped around their minds began to recede, pulling back as genuine courage flickered through the air. Moses' heart surged. Could this actually work? But the creature, ever relentless, bellowed, You cannot escape. It lunged again, flying through the light at an impossibly fast speed, its jaws wide, ready to consume all that stood in its path. With instincts honed by desperation, Moses swung his staff, a blinding flash erupting from it in defiance. The creature shrieked, the sound piercing the air like shattering glass. For a moment, the world stilled, the cacophony fading into nothingness. In that heartbeat of silence, glimmers of hope sparked in the crowd. Their breathing steadied. Together, Moses urged. We push through now. As they joined him, a radiant glow enveloped them, a collective surge of bravery pushing against the darkness. Yet there was a flicker of doubt in Moses' mind. Was this enough? The ground quaked beneath them, and then time seemed to freeze as the creature's eyes narrowed in unholy wrath, targeting Moses again. He realized then that it would stop at nothing to reclaim those it deemed lost, to devour not just their souls, but also the very essence of their fight for survival. Would they finally regain their footing in the fray, or would they fall victim to this dark tide? As the creature reared back for another strike, light and darkness spiraled around them, and the question hung heavy in the air. Could they withstand the onslaught, or would they become another tale of despair sitting upon the shores of this cursed sea? The creature surged forward, its dark maw splitting the air with a bone-rattling roar. Moses braced himself against the oncoming wave of darkness, every fiber of his being screaming for escape. But he couldn't back down. Not now. Focus the light, he shouted, his voice barely piercing the monstrous chaos. The radiant glows surrounding them flickered as hands reached out, trembling but determined. Each heartbeat echoed like a war drum, pumping fervor into the crowd. The vibrant energy surged, brightening before dimming under the beast's sinister presence. The first blow connected. The creature's jaws snapped closed inches from Moses, a spray of dark water splattering across him. He felt the ooze, cold and slippery, wrapping around his legs, pulling him toward the depths. Panic clawed at the edges of his resolve. Pull together, he cried out, his voice a lifeline in the madness. Don't let it take you. The crowd rallied with him, their fear morphing into something primal. Light began to pulse more intensely, cascading down like a waterfall, illuminating every shadow, every flicker of despair. He caught a glimpse of their faces, determined, betrayed, and terrified. These were people who dared to challenge their fears, and in that moment, Moses felt their collective strength. It was electric. Now, he commanded, raising his staff high. The crowd echoed his call. Together, they thrust their hands forward, a barrier of hope crashing against the darkness. The light expanded, the very air vibrating with energy as it pushed against the creature's evil aura. But the shadows had a will of their own. Tendrils lashed out from the creature's form, snaking toward them like desperate fingers. Moses could feel their icy grip, trying to wrap around his heart, squeezing tighter. Memories of failure flooded him, moments he wished he could erase. He gasped, realizing this was the creature's insidious game, to dangle their regrets as bait, but Moses couldn't falter. He thought of the young man who was dragged under, of the lives hanging in the balance. He wouldn't let despair define them. He focused all his energy, drawing light from deep within his heart, unleashing it toward the creature. The flash erupted, illuminating the scene with blinding brightness. Shadows recoiled, the creature hissing as it shielded its eyes. For a breath, they had it at bay. Keep going! Moses rallied, his voice igniting a fire in their souls. They held the luminous force steady, feeding it with every shred of determination they could muster. Hope no longer felt like a far-fetched dream, it was tangible. Then, with a horrifying roar, the creature began to charge again, its form twisting and reshaping itself. The air crackled with tension. Moses' heart raced. Every instinct warned him of what was coming. The creature was evolving, becoming something more primal, more vicious. Courage, he urged, but doubt gnawed at him. Would their bravery be enough? As the darkness surged, he felt the fabric of reality ripple around them. The boundary between light and dark blurred, menacingly teetering toward oblivion. Suddenly, from within the depths of the struggle, a voice broke through, strong, confident. "We will not be taken." It was the young woman beside him, her eyes blazing. With that, the light flared again, fiercer than before, but the creature lunged, twisting its horrid mass to unleash a powerful wave of darkness that could swallow them whole. Time slowed, breath stopped, and the crowd braced, all eyes fixed on the twisted demon descending upon them. Moses' thoughts spiraled. Could they truly unearth the strength within and stand against this horror? Or would they falter, lost to the very fears they fought? As the darkness enveloped them, the chilling realization struck Moses: this was not just a battle against a monstrous creature, it was a fight for their very souls. And with that, the shadows closed in, leaving a single question echoing in the chaos: who would emerge as true champions, and who would be forever lost to the dark? The darkness crashed down like a tidal wave, suffocating and thick. Moses felt it clawing at his insides, a visceral terror that threatened to drown his resolve. He had never faced anything like this before. This wasn't merely an enemy. It was a manifestation of every fear he had ever carried. "Fight!" he roared, the shout ripping through the suffocating shroud. But the word felt weak against the weight of despair. Panic rippled through the crowd as the creature advanced. Hearts raced, breaths quickened, and the flickering light waned under the oppressive shadow. Just as the creature's maw descended, darkness pulsed with a life of its own. Shadows clawed at Moses, wrapping around his limbs, their icy whispers promising surrender. Memories flashed in his mind, moments of failure, glimpses of every time he had let someone down, faces disappearing into the void of his regrets. It was a cruel reminder that every soul in this desperate stand had their own burdens to bear. "Stay with me," he shouted, even as the weight of failure pressed down on him. In that moment, he felt a connection, a tether to the faces around him, to their hopes and dreams. They were not just individuals, they were a collective force. They were a storm, and together, they could channel that fury. He drew a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the light within him swell back to life. "Remember why we fight," he urged, eyes darting among the crowd. "For each other. For our future." With renewed fervor, the crowd began to chant, a rhythm building, a collective heartbeat that resonated against the beast's impending doom. Eager hands swayed, urging forth the light, and in that moment, the air tingled with electricity. The darkness flickered. Hope ignited. The creature hesitated, confusion rippling through its monstrous form as light surged forward once again, bright and fierce. Moses' heart swelled. This was at a critical push against the malevolent force that threatened to swallow them whole. But then the ground shook. The air snapped like a taut string. The creature paused, its gaze darting, sensing the shift. It bellowed in fury, a roar that bounced off the walls of their sanctuary, drowning out their cries, drowning out their courage. In a terrifying instant, the shadows coalesced into something shapeless yet palpable, a wave of sheer fury crashing toward them. Tendrils snaked out, reaching, pulling, attempting to drag them into its all-consuming wrath. Moses felt that cold touch again, the grip on his heart tightening. Memories shifted into horror as phantoms, faces of those he defiled, appeared in the shadows. His breath hitched. Had he really failed them? Would he let that happen again? Then, a flash pierced the darkness, a beacon from the young woman he stood beside. Her hand shot forward, unyielding, breaking the weight. "We will not back down," she cried. Her light erupted, causing the darkness to recoil with a screech that rattled their bones. Moses seized the moment. "Channel her fire," he called. Strength bloomed within, swelling like a tide. One by one, hands found their purpose, joining together, forming a web of brilliance that spun around them, weaving hope into the chaos. But the creature was relentless. It surged forward, now a monstrous, swirling mass of anger and despair. With a roar that sent chills racing down their spines, it bared its fangs again, fiercer than before, more desperate to feast on their fear. "Hold!" Moses yelled, his voice an anchor amid the storm. They pushed back against the oncoming force, but doubt crept in. A single thought lingered, cold and paralyzing. What if this was their last stand? The shadows were closing in, and every second felt like a thunderclap against their hearts. Would this be where they fell? Then, as darkness threatened to swallow them whole, something shifted a glimmer behind the chaos. A realization sparked. It wasn't just their collective fear sustaining the creature. It was something deeper, something they had yet to grasp. And in that revelation, a new question arose: what if the true battle was not against the monster, but within themselves? As the feast of shadows encroached, the light flickered, and the ultimate truth loomed large. Could they unearth the power of their own fears and find a way to turn it against the shadows? In that moment of despair and hope, their fate rested on a precipice, teetering on the edge of a revelation that might change everything. Moses braced himself as the shadows writhed before him, each movement echoing his own turmoil. The surge of powerful emotions both terrified and exhilarated him, like standing on the cusp of a storm. The darkness loomed, a beast crafted from every regret he'd ever harbored. It was the embodiment of his deepest fears, and now it had taken form. With every flicker of the light, Moses could see the phantoms dancing in its depths, the faces of loved ones, the grins of friends he'd failed, the echoes of hope that turned to dust. The very air grew heavier, and the chanting gradually waned, drowned by an enormous swell of despair. "Don't give in!" the young woman shouted, her voice unwavering amidst the chaos. But even as her words rang clear, Moses felt the tides of uncertainty pull at him. What if they had miscalculated? What if this was only the beginning of their downfall? Suddenly, the creature lunged forward in a furious arc, its shadowy limbs sweeping like an avalanche. Moses and those around him stumbled back, the rhythm of their chant faltering. Panic clawed at their throats, desperation clawing at the air like a crowd fighting for breath. "Remember," Moses yelled, straining against the suffocating doubt. "Remember why we fight. We are not alone." He extended his arms, as if to embrace the crowd. "You have the power. Use it." And in that heartbeat, hope flickered in the eyes around him once more. Emboldened by his words, the collective energy surged through them, illuminating their stand against despair. One by one, hands clutched at nothing but air, and yet connected, weaving a lattice of light that began to consume the shadows. Moses felt the warmth emanate from their souls, a vibrant tapestry of humanity woven together against the monstrous void. But still, the creature was relentless, and it retaliated. Twisting violently, it released a guttural roar that ruptured the ground beneath them. Their makeshift sanctuary trembled. Bodies swayed, uncertainty clawing at their hearts anew. For a moment, the shadows merged into a single entity, a colossal maw of doom. Moses could almost feel the breath of the beast cold and rancid as it drew closer, tasting the burdens of their despair. The weight on his chest returned, squeezing tighter as images flashed in his mind. Moments when he'd been afraid to speak up, when he'd turned his back on those who needed him. "Face it," he urged, desperately trying to drown out his own fears. "Face your shadows. They are nothing without our belief." His shout sliced through the encircling darkness, reminiscent of the divine command that had once parted the Red Sea. This battle wasn't for survival alone, it was a reckoning. The supplication echoed with power, and the flickering light took on life, fueled by the group as determination. Yet just as the glowing web began to stabilize, something quite extraordinary transpired. The shadows faltered, but in their retreat, a figure emerged, a silhouette forming in the heart of darkness. Who was that? Moses squinted, trying to focus. The figure appeared familiar, but shrouded in shadow. Moses's heart raced. Who are you? He called out, uncertainty clinging to the words. I am the shadow you fear most, the figure replied softly, its voice chilling yet strangely comforting. The truth you must confront. A gasp spread through the crowd as they looked upon this new image. It was no longer just a terror. It was an unsettling reflection of themselves, a mirror to their deepest insecurities. The weight of the realization sank in. Perhaps the greatest enemy was not the creature itself but the darkness they carried inside. And in that moment of unnerving clarity, a question loomed large. Could confronting this figure unlock the path to their salvation, or would it serve only to deepen their ruin? With disbelief coursing through him, Moses took a step forward, trembling but resolute. What do you want from us? He demanded. The figure stood firm, its voice echoing through the gathering storm, promising revelations that could shatter everything they understood. And as the shadows gathered for their final confrontation, the answer to that question was yet to unfold. Moses could feel every heart in the crowd beating with urgency, a shared anxiety pulsing in the air around him. The figure remained silent, its presence heavy, almost suffocating. It felt as if a weight of history pressed upon them all. Moses searched for answers in the gaze of those he had rallied together. Fear danced in their eyes, but a flicker of something else lingered, determination. Don't listen to it, someone shouted, a voice wavering but strong. It wants to drag us down. Do you not see? The figure replied, a hint of disdain lacing its tone. You already walk with a shadow. How can you banish what is part of you? The crowd stirred, murmurs weaving uncertainty through their ranks. Doubts resurfaced, gnawing at their unity. Moses fought to drown out the din. They needed clarity. No, he cried. This is not who we are. We face the shadows to reclaim our light, not to be consumed by them. The words spilled from him, infused with the weight of his own struggles. We all fight our darkness, but it cannot win if we stand together. This figure cannot define us. The shadows pulsed ominously around them, undulating with palpable rage. As his voice echoed, the ground beneath Moses quaked, the shadows seeming to writhe in protest. But he stood firm, his resolve growing stronger. Each heartbeat reverberated like a drum in his ears, a call that stirred those around him. What did you give up to be here? The figure pressed, its voice a slender blade slicing through the air. What shadows have you fed? Moses felt a coldness seep through him, memories of regret surfacing. Moments he wanted to forget pushed against his mind. The faces of those he had let down flickered like ghosts. He steadied himself, searching for something deeper, something that could anchor him against the surging storm. I want to hide, he shouted defiantly. This is our fight. We reclaim our choices, acknowledge what we've lost, but with a promise to do better. As each word left his lips, a wave of light erupted from their clasped hands. The darkness pushed back, swirling violently, but the glimmer of hope clashed with despair, igniting the space around them. The shadows shrieked in agony, recoiling as if burned by the light. The crowd began to chant again, voices rising like a chorus. One voice became many, a tapestry woven from their pain and determination. Moses felt their energy reignite, their spirits aligning with their resolve. With each pulse of the chant, the figure's form blurred, its outline flickering as if struggling against the tide of their collective will. You think yourselves free? It spat, a desperation creeping into its voice that sent chills down Moses' spine. But even as it raged, a part of Moses felt a strange pity for this creature he had birthed from their fears? Those that gripped his heart so tightly he could barely breathe. What you represent doesn't own me, he roared, channeling everything he had into that one powerful declaration. The creature let out a sound like shattering glass, a discordant wail that echoed into the cavernous void. Light intensified, warm and brilliant, sweeping through the shadows. Moses closed his eyes against the brilliance, focusing on the knot of strength blossoming within. In an unexpected twist, the figure's form began to waver, morphing like mist. Faces flashed before Moses, familiar yet distorted, each one intertwined with his own mischances and fears. "What do you see?" the figure whispered, the pleading undertone taking him aback. Moses opened his eyes slowly, the light illuminating the figure distinctly now. The face's friends, lost souls, even himself at moments of weakness spoke to him. Not reminders of shame, but echoes beckoning for resolution. "Confront the truth," he murmured, realization dawning. The true battle was within. "It's time to face what we've hidden." Shoulders squared and breath steady, the collective group prepared themselves to face this fusion of fear and regret. But as they braced for that confrontation, another sound erupted, an unseen force thundering above unleashed a last terrible roar, drowning out their efforts. With that, Moses felt the tremors in his soul. Would they prevail against this final onslaught? Or was there more hidden in the depths of this darkness that they had yet to confront? The shadows began to swirl deeper around them, ready to claim their fate. And as the night thickened, a single thought pierced through the chaos. What if this darkness held the key to their very salvation? Moses stood at the precipice of despair, staring into the swirling shadows that danced like phantoms of his own making. The air crackled with tension, and the voices from the depths began to coalesce into a chilling harmony. Each echoed cry entwined with the overlaps of his memories, regrets, fears, and unfulfilled promises. He shuddered, but he could not falter now. The battle was not just against the creature. It was a confrontation with himself, with the very fears that had threatened to tear him apart. "Hold your ground," he shouted as the darkness surged around them like a living entity, each tendril reaching toward their trembling hearts. The crowd, eyes wide with dread, clutched each other tightly. Faces once full of hope began to pale, doubt creeping in. But Moses refused to let them drown in their fears. "These shadows do not define us. They are born from our choices, but they do not own our future." With those words, a rush of energy pulsed from him, radiating outward like light piercing through the thickest fog. The crowd clung to it, fingers entwining in a web of connected souls, refusing to be separated by the gnashing teeth of despair. And in that heartbeat, a spark ignited. It spread, warming both the air and their hearts. The light began to flourish like a wildfire, devouring the darkness. "Together," Moses bellowed, thrusting his staff high. "We fight not just for survival, but for the lives we can reclaim." As one, they echoed his fervor, channeling courage into every flicker of light. They could see it now. The creature, trembling under the weight of their combined might, hesitated, its monstrous form faltering. "The truth will shatter you," it howled, snarling as the radiant light clashed against its twisted visage, sending shadows spiraling into chaos. But the people around Moses were ignited with unyielding resolve. Memories that had burdened them shifted, each regret turned into a stepping stone toward victory. Moses' heart raced as he saw the embodiment of fear metamorphose. Its anguished growls faded, twisting into something softer. The creature, once monstrous and terrifying, suddenly appeared vulnerable, enveloped in the illuminating glow of their unity. It was as if the darkness knew defeat was imminent. "I am your shadow," it whispered, a twinge of desperation lacing its voice. "You cannot escape me." But alongside the chill of dread, another voice rang out, the young woman from earlier, now emboldened and fierce. "We confront our shadows. And in doing so, we reclaim our light." As she spoke, others rallied, their voices growing louder. It became a chorus, threads of resolve weaving a tapestry that bound them together. Moses felt the energy building raw, electric. "This is our truth. We will not live in the past, nor be bound by it." With a surge of will and determination, He thrust his staff forward, focusing the luminescence of hope into a seismic wave that crashed against the creature. The light expanded, filling the void, pushing the shadows back into the depths from whence they came. The battle reached a crescendo as the creature roared with fury, the sound reverberating like a thunderclap within them. But even as the darkness writhed, its desperation echoed the finality that lay on the horizon, a reckoning. The shadows began to dissolve, unraveling into nothingness, the creature as form disintegrating like morning mist chased away by the sun. Moses watched in awe as the last remnants of darkness faded like a nightmare distilling into daylight. The faces of those he once lost emerged in flickers, offering smiles and nods of recognition as if whispering their approval. Hope flooded him, a warmth radiating in the wake of their collective victory. A hush fell over the crowd, the shadows gone, but the burden of their past remained, albeit lighter now. The unified group stood together, each heart beating as one. They had confronted the worst of themselves and emerged stronger than ever. "Today, we stand together," Moses declared, voice unwavering and sincere. "And today, we vow to face the truths that haunt us, transforming our shadows into strength." A wave of agreement washed over them, eyes shining with newfound conviction. They were a single unit, forged in the fire of confrontation, an unstoppable force of resilience. As they finally stepped onto the firm ground of freedom, the sun began to rise, painting the horizon with hues of redemption and hope. Moses felt a tear slide down his cheek, but it was not born of despair. No, it was the sweet relief of release. He had faced his nightmares and emerged, and now they would shape the future, a future where their truths could no longer bind them. He turned to the crowd, smiles blossoming, faces shining with warmth, and he felt something stir within him, the promise of a brighter journey ahead. "Let us walk forward together," Moses called. They stepped forth into the dawn, hearts lighter, spirits renewed, ready to create a life unshackled from the burdens of yesterday. And now, as we close this chapter, remember this: subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this conclusion, a community united in thought. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this powerful end. You need to support the channel. Every action matters.